What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rewatch Ryan YouTube channel. My name is Ryan Snelling. I am finally delivering on a promise. I'm ready to open up the conversation and the discussion around my journey working with Schmoes Know and Collider and eventually running and managing the Schmoes Know podcast feed. I did a version of this video that I'm not going to put out. I talked basically from the time that I got started with the Schmoville podcast all the way till the very end. It covers like 4 years. And I found that I wasn't able to dive too deep into any particular moment. And I didn't find it that interesting for you all. I could have broken it down into several episodes, but it's not really what I wanted to do. So I went back through some of the YouTube channels to find the older archived videos of all the podcasts that I used to do, episodes of the Schmoes Know Show and Collider Live, things that I talked about in the moment. And I stumbled upon something that fascinated me. So let's go on over here. So this is the Collider Podcast YouTube channel. As you can see, I searched 4 years back. It really wasn't that far because I think the most recent video was 2 years ago. So I looked back and found this episode of Collider Afterthoughts. Now, this is episode 15, and this is the first one I found, meaning it's the most recent one on the channel, right? I thought, that's weird because I know that we did way more episodes than that. So I scrolled down a little bit more, of course, find episode 14, 13, 12, 11, 9. So episode 10 is missing. I keep going. There's episode 8. Sorry, it's loading. Episode 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 6 and 7 and 10 are missing. Okay, that's weird. I knew that we did more than 15 episodes, but the fact that we were missing a couple, it reminded me that there actually was a missing or lost episode of Collider Afterthoughts that never made it to air in our initial run. That kind of hasn't been spoken about since Jay and I recorded it. Something happened on Collider Live between me and Kristian and Mark Reilly, but it prompted a bigger discussion between Collider and Kristian's handling of our podcast. And Jay and I had a conversation that was extensive on an episode of Afterthoughts. And we did as we always do. We sent it in to the Wangers or Thad, whoever was uploading our podcast that week. But because it was creatively and cleverly titled by moi, it prompted somebody to listen to it before they uploaded it. And it got passed around amongst the people that worked at Collider, and it became this sort of infamous show, and eventually Kristian and Fernandez got a hold of it, and before it was published, they let Jay and I know that it could not air. So what I want to react to today is the clip that prompted the lost episode of Collider Afterthoughts. This is a very dynamic clip. I'm going to be able to talk a lot about my experience just based on these few minutes of content. A lot of good stuff comes up. And it's good too, because there's a lot of things that I've forgotten. There's a lot of things that I've compartmentalized to forget. So I wanted to make sure that I could speak to things that I could recall entirely. So the fact that I'm going to react to this clip and be able to dive into a lot of details, this is just a much more efficient way to go about this. So the last episode of Afterthoughts that I've found on YouTube, and if I pause it, the date of this was July 28th, 2018. Now the clip that I'm going to react to is dated for September 12th, 2018, which means there are episodes from July to September that are missing. And then there are episodes that are missing from here until the end of our run, which Jay and I ultimately quit towards the end of 2018. I don't think we made it to 2019, but either way, there are a lot of missing episodes of Collider Afterthoughts, not just the one that was supposed to be missing. So anyway, this is the clip that prompted the lost episode, and it involves me directly. You can see in the description, I think if I've got it up, the timestamp, Riley's got a problem with a certain host. This is about me. And I'm just going to go on and play it and react, and you will learn a lot about what it was like to work for these people and host these after shows. So let's just go on and do this thing.
And yeah, so the other thing is, Riley, you came in today a little hot, though. Something happened yesterday, a little hot.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
I came in a little hot.
Hey, look, hashtag that's the show.
That's the show.
If you're associated with the show any bit, then you're going to be in the spotlight.
Light up the fire emoji.
So that's the show. That was something that Kristian always said about Collider Live. Anything goes is essentially the idea. That's the show kind of reminds me of, do you guys have that like jerk friend that says whatever he wants or she wants without worrying about your feelings? And then when you call them out on it or call them a jerk or an a-hole, they just say, hey, I'm just being honest. But that's just their justification to be shitty. That's what That's the Show was sometimes like.
Jesus, you can set it up and I'll comment.
All right. So I got yesterday. I was sitting in my office, and Riley comes walking in, going, "What is this?"
Now, did he bring in the garbage people poster as well to set you off?
No, I was fine.
Okay, good.
No, this was a conversation between two friends who've known each other for 20 years.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So Riley walks in and he has his phone in his hand. And he goes, "Look at this, dude." And I'm like, what is it? So what happened?
I was hoping it was a 30-second fight, to be honest with you.
No, I would have been better.
Can they please bring that back? So I'm actually on Movie Talk yesterday.
Yeah.
And we don't bring computers on anymore, so I do pull up my notes every once in a while on my phone to just make sure I have a talking point. And I got a text.
Yeah.
And the text asked...
when you get a text when you're on air, it's the fucking worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst, especially when someone knows that you're doing a show.
Doing a show, yeah.
Okay, so they're talking about me texting Riley. So first of all, I didn't know that Riley was recording a show at the time that I texted him. Also, what an LA thing to say. Oh my God, it's the worst getting a text. As if everyone in your life should know when you're on air. Also, just have your phone on silent. It's like doing anything and getting a text. You don't have to respond right away. But I guess it's special if you're on air and hosting a show for YouTube.
Hey, could you call me? No.
It's a live show. And you can see that I'm on it. So anyways,
I did.
Beside the point.
Actually, you know what? Real quick. So when I was hosting these shows, I wasn't paid for them. I had shitty retail management jobs. So while this is taking place, I am an assistant store manager at a Dollar General. It's one of the worst jobs I've ever had. And my day-to-day would be listening or watching to Collider content so that I could take notes and prep for that week's episode of Collider Afterthoughts in this particular instance. So what I was doing when I texted Riley while he was on air, I was listening to a previous episode that I guess Riley and Kristian had to have been on together. So it had to have been a previous episode of Jedi Council or another episode of Collider Live. So I didn't know they were live on air. I was too busy listening to their other content for the show that I hosted. So here we go.
And it pops up and I have the voice or the face recognition thing. So the text comes up and then recognizes my face and it opens and I read it on Movie Talk and I go, that's fucking nonsense.
Right.
And I put it aside, which is basically somebody asking me, is it me or are we putting each other down, meaning me and Kristian on the show on Collider Live?
I think he was more or less asking you if I was putting you down. That's the way I read it.
Yeah, I guess I read that too. Yeah, I read that as well.
Kristian's right. My text to Riley, I was asking him if he thought Kristian put him down too much on the show.
Well, and I went, why am I getting this text?
He's like, and he goes, "Is it me?" And Riley writes back, "Yeah,
yes,
it's you.
It's you."
So, and we got, call him. It was Snelling.
It was Snelling.
And so,
and listen, and I've given him that right. I've responded to his text.
Right.
I think he's a great kid.
He is a good kid.
And that one was a little too much.
The problem is,
okay, so real quick. That one was a little too much. So what he's speaking to and what actually happened, Riley and I had plenty of private conversations. Now, some of them were just banter. Some of them were about whatever movie was coming out that week. But we also had private conversations about other people in this space. And so when he says that one was a little too far, this was just an instance of it was okay until it wasn't okay. This happened to just be the one time that I upset Riley with one of these texts. But it wasn't just Riley that I spoke to. And here's what was always fascinating about being in the position that I was in for years. My relationship with a lot of these people I'm the guy who critiques them on a podcast. I watch everything they do. I obsess over their content and their personality, their tweets, everything. So what Kristian would do is take it to air and dramatize it and get people worked up about certain things that I said, because he loved to just kind of poke the bear, if you will, and use things that I said to upset people and just to make drama out of it. Frustrated the ever living piss out of me because it would misconstrue what I actually meant, and it would kind of taint people's relationships with me when I was a fan first. And like, I liked all of them and wanted to work with them first, but I was really just critiquing them because that was the job. But it kind of just ruined people's view of me, and it was very, very frustrating that I had no control over that whatsoever, and that my praise for these pundits never got across. It was always the stuff that could be turned into drama and critique and things like that. So I kind of had like weird, bad relationships with a lot of people because I was just the guy who talks shit on a podcast. But there were also others that worked around these parts that would latch on to something that I said and relate to it. So if I happened to critique an individual or could speak about something, they found this weird, I don't know if solace is the word, but they would reach out to me and kind of let me know that I was onto something, and also give me like a little nugget that like I never exposed to anybody, because it was just like a private message to me that I just kept for myself. Here's the other thing too, is that Kristian was my boss, my handler, my manager. He was a lot of their bosses and managers. In any job setting, what happens? The employees vent to each other about management. This was no different. Now, I was 2,000 miles away, but people vented to me. I vented to them about management. It happened all the time. So again, this is just the one time that it wasn't okay and it got out. We can even apply that idea to the John Campea, Robert Meyer Burnett videos I made a couple of weeks ago. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that work in that space that reached out to me because of those videos. People I never would have dreamed of subscribing to me or texting me or DMing me because of those videos. Yeah, if you're onto something and people relate to it, then you hear from people. So anyway, so that's what my relationship was like with a lot of people here, just to add more context.
Is this.
And that one was too much.
I was texting back and forth with Jay Williams.
Yeah.
The problem is this. Their job as Afterthoughts hosts, which they crush it every week, and you guys should listen to it.
They're great, and I'm listening.
They're great on Movie Talk. It is really well done. It analyzes everything that's going on, and they have a lot of great ideas. And they say some, as they say, some dong takes sometimes.
Dong?
Dong. But
Garbage people.
And they do a lot. There's a lot of things that they do that is great. And I think, and again, I've really liked a lot of stuff they've done. And so much so that Jay Williams is now co-hosting the MMA show with Roca and Dennis.
Really?
Yeah, and he's really good. And they're both really good. They're really good podcasters. They really break this stuff down. And so my thing was, I have no problem if on their show it drops on Fridays, right? If they say, hey, listen, I'm looking in that room, and it looks like, whether they say, what's going on with Kristian and Riley? Are they putting each other down? Is Kristian putting Riley down? I don't care. That's a discussion that should be on the show.
Yeah, they could, I mean, that's fine if they want to bring it up on the show.
What are you doing?
But don't text me.
What are
on
you
that.
doing texting someone? And it's like, are you trying to cause a rift?
Yes.
What are you doing?
And that's what it.
No, no, I wasn't. Again, this was just the one time that I got out. Not trying to cause a rift. It's just not how it worked out.
Yeah, it
And
pissed
it
you
pissed
off.
me
I
off
know.
because I went, wait a minute. Now you're commenting on not only my work,
Right.
but you're and also texting us when I know Snelling, you are talking about working for Collider and how happy you are to be working for Collider.
Yeah, what a mistake.
Don't text some of the higher ups about bullshit.
Right.
That's
The reason why I sent that text, it wasn't just some out of the blue outlier. I don't remember specific details. Like, I couldn't pull up every single video where Kristian put Riley down. But if anybody's going to catch on to that kind of stuff, it's going to be me. Now, yes, I was wrong, apparently. Or maybe not. Maybe they just decided to focus on this angle. But whatever content I was listening to, and I remember talking to Jay about this in the moment, there was something about the dynamic between Kristian and Reilly on a few episodes where it wasn't just like shit talking to each other. I kind of felt like Kristian was kind of being a jerk to Reilly. So it was a pattern that I saw. I remember asking Jay about it. Jay probably didn't think anything of it, but I was thinking about it. And so I texted Reilly personally to see what was up, if I was right. It comes off as senseless to them, and to a degree, maybe it was senseless. But again, they're missing the context that I do have those conversations.
Wait a minute.
And I had to be the guy that's texting, but it's like, the thing is, that's you got to be careful there.
Yeah, so when this happened in the moment, again, I was working, stocking groceries or doing whatever I was doing. Kristian messaged me after this happened and, laid into me. And just like a lot of other conversations, I kind of had to be a dog with my tail between my legs and just take it, apologize. I couldn't really explain to the extent that I've just explained to you all so far as to how we got to me texting Reilly in the first place. But he left it at he was just going to talk to Jay from now on when it came to handling the show. And I think he even referenced it earlier in this conversation where he said he was talking to Jay. So he said that he was only going to talk to Jay or deal with Jay from here on out because it was just easier. And this morning, the morning of this show, I knew that they were going to talk about me. I didn't know to what extent, but when we woke up, Kristian texted Jay to let him know that we were going to have a conversation about this. And Jay told me, and I had no idea what to think. So I'm watching this in real time the way that everyone was. And it sucked.
And you have to be careful.
And that's nonsense that I don't want to...
It's also...
How old is he?
He's in his 20s.
Yeah, okay. Period.
But look,
so are you.
100%, but men are stupid.
So I would have been 27 when this happened, and I think Roxy's only like a month older than me. But men are stupid.
That's true.
I mean, I'm not talking
like guys in their 20s. I'm so sorry to
He's late 20s,
people.
I think.
Sometimes you just some people do get it, but some people don't. The fact that you don't sit there, you write out that text, and you think to yourself, "What is this? The purpose of
What's
this?
the purpose?
How could this be helpful?
Right.
How am I making my boss's lives easier in any way by doing this?"
And,
I'm not
going to hear about it?
Yeah, and that's the funny part is I walk right...
You didn't hear about 50% of the conversations that I ever had about you.
And I go, hey...
Look at it, like immediately after...
Immediately when I got... after
obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So,
but that kind of stuff is
fucking
nonsense.
stupid.
It's kind of like
It's silly.
kind of out of bounds.
Right.
It's kind of but again, I've allowed
It's silly, but it wasn't stupid.
text. I've had conversations with him via text because I like him. But that's where it's like, dude, now you brought your show to my life, and I don't need that.
Right.
And
That's the
don't.
thing. And again,
Yeah.
if you want to discuss it, and look, they should discuss what we're talking about right here. This is part of Collider Live. And
We did, but nobody heard it.
this conversation last night. He
was.
broke into the studio last night, and he designed his own poster over Snelling's poster. So right now,
Wow,
that's
he
JT's.
got bitter about
He was
it.
bitter about it. So he scotch taped himself to the wall.
Can we see that on the show?
Look at the little drawing
I think
that he
you can
made.
see it in the background. But so
Okay.
we'll take a picture of it.
Snelling
We'll
is
have it
shaking
like
in his
in
boots.
the
Oh
website.
yeah,
We'll put it-
I didn't feel good. I mean, I was, especially because of this, I was a pretty anxious person. I mean, I am in general, but more anxious in my 20s. And yeah, I was sick to my stomach the entire time this was going on.
Can we stay on something for a second? Because now that it has been brought up, I am just curious about it. What was he referring to? Did we ever get an answer?
break each other's balls. And it's
but
like,
I don't even
and that's
remember.
what Macuga and I were talking about.
I don't
before
remember
we
you
started.
even doing that one
Yeah.
time.
No, but that's just what guys do.
right.
If it
Don't you
seems
guys
like
break
that,
my balls too?
Yes,
All the time.
That's
Yeah.
why
You
you're on
can
the
hang
show.
on the-
The only thing I can say to this is like, it's just not the reason I texted him. I texted him because it didn't seem like shit talking and breaking balls. It was different, in my opinion, at the time. So it's not like any time they shit on each other, I would just be texting them. Otherwise, this clip would have, I mean, they would have had this conversation 2 years prior based on, I don't know, something else that was nothing.
show.
Yes.
And here's the thing: I could definitely tell that he was trying to get something from me that he can bring on the show, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
He
Right.
wants me to respond in a way
Yeah,
that
fuck
he
Kristian.
can then
Right.
I
bring
would
it up on the
almost
show.
rather
That's what
him-
it felt like, and that I don't appreciate.
Okay, so it's not that simple. That stuff happened all the time. So I would get information the way that Kristian or John Campea or anybody else would hear scoops and then sometimes use that to like formulate their opinion or maybe make predictions about certain things, like maybe a casting, because they actually heard that a movie casting was real and then they put it out there as if it's their own thing. So that's what Jay and I used to do. Sometimes they would feed us nuggets and then we would use that to speculate. So we were privileged in that way, and I always appreciated that. We were privileged in that sometimes we talk about stuff on the podcast that we were already privy to. Like whenever they would do a Collider Town Hall and they would announce the podcast network or whatever, we were always tipped on that kind of stuff beforehand. So what Reilly is referencing, that was part of the relationship and dynamic that I had with a lot of them, but there was never any like ill intent. So like, if Mark had responded to me, yeah, it sucks, me and Kristian are going through it or whatever, I wouldn't have actually discussed that on air. Then I probably would have been like, have you noticed Kristian has kind of been shitting on Reilly more than everybody else? Like, I always formulated it into like a podcast take and never exposed the actual, I'm moving my hands a lot, but you get what I'm saying. That's what it was like. Again, it was one of those things. It was okay until it wasn't okay. And this one just peeved him.
I'd almost rather him tweet publicly at you.
Well, yeah.
No,
and, like,
you would.
bring up
Exactly.
part of the
Put it out there on
Put it
Twitter.
as a bit. Like,
and
what's
I could
going
be-
on with you guys?
Yeah.
It's
I
like
could be-
nothing.
And here's your funny gif in my
Right.
response, you know, and it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
oh, Superman screaming as he breaks Zod's neck or something.
But what I am interested, though, I'm interested what the retort's going to be now on Friday. And I think the thing is, we'll listen to it. But the thing, what I
I'm
think,
not
You
gonna
got
listen
beef?
Well, you're
anymore.
not going to listen
No,
anymore?
I'm done. I don't want to
Why?
listen because
That's
I just
not-
got a text.
Fuck off.
You just got a text now?
I'm kidding.
Oh, he's kidding. Now, the show is a must listen for me. I listen to it all the time. I think they're really good together.
They're very good
And
together.
they break it down. Yeah.
And
You
I
say the
like it.
nicest things. You literally have said the nicest things
You
about that
plug
show.
that show more than any
It's
show on the
so-
network.
And-
So smart to bite the hand that
Well,
feeds you.
but
I
it's
think
on-
that's intelligent.
I don't think he's necessarily biting the hand. I think that what
he
it
just
is
took
is
a massive chunk out of your hand.
no. What I think
Just
it
the hands
is,
that rocks the cradle.
what I think it was, and this is the thing, and you'll hear it when you listen to their show, and that's the thing is you listen to them and the way that their dynamic is. The thing with him is he thinks, and he plays a bit out of it too. He wants to be part of the crew. He wants to be a friend, but he takes it to this.
good way to do
But the
that.
thing is, you're not. Like, we don't know you, so you can't text Riley. You can
somebody
talk
that-
about him, but you can't. Anyway, I want to move on from that.
So the reason why at this point I had been hosting after shows for these guys in various forms for about 3 years, maybe less, almost 3 years at this point. Very few of them, and it took me a while to figure this out, but very few of them took any time to get to know me in any capacity. And one of the reasons why I never understood that was because I didn't quite understand the LA corporate side of this, where a lot of these pundits are hustlers and they just go from show to show, trying to pick up contract work, make a living for themselves. But there was also this dynamic, especially with the Schmoes, that they were also like a friends group. So, and there was also a lot of drama behind the scenes that nobody is privy to. And it's like, you just don't. I mean, look, the backlash that I get on the Campea and Burnett shows, all the people that are like, you're grasping for straws, you're reaching to make all these points. And it's like, no, what we see on air is not what it's like behind the scenes. That's all I can tell you. It's not. Kristian and Reilly could have actually had like a falling out friendship, but we would never know because they also have to do the show and play people don't think about that. My point is, at the time, I thought it was always kitty cats and cotton candy with these guys. And I just wanted them to accept me and be a part of the group that I thought they were. And I realized that some of this stuff is a drag for them. Maybe they don't want to host a show today. Maybe they wake up one day and don't want to host Jedi Council, or maybe they don't want to be on Collider Movie Talk, or this person's fighting with this one. And I never saw any of that. So I always thought it was roses. And I always expected, because they supported each other, went on each other's shows and things like that, I thought that I was going to get the same treatment. But I didn't. and a lot of people didn't take the time to get to know me. I was always pigeonholed as this thing. And a lot of it was because, out of my control, Kristian would control the narrative when it came to informing the others about what I said and did. And I never really had control of my impressions. It was always frustrating. When Kristian says, you're not a part of the group, we don't know you, he didn't want to know me. I remember, I think it was even after this, Jay and Kristian had a phone conversation where Jay was sticking up for me, and Jay asked him if he even knew what I did for a living, and he didn't. And this was like 2 or 3 years into me podcasting for him. It's just not how our relationship was. And I remember reaching out to hosts on other shows, like, again, kind of like this. Hey, is it me, or is this just how this is, hosting a show on this network? And other people would confirm, yeah, it kind of is like that. It's not exactly what you think it is or what you want it to be. And it took me a while to figure that out. And because I wasn't in the LA of it all, I just thought I was making content with a friends group. It was that classic, like, don't meet your heroes. Like, it's not as shiny and glamorous as you think it is. So what ended up happening is things like this, where they would just kind of like shit on me or take something I said on the podcast super seriously and then misconstrue it. But there were times when afterthoughts, we would react to the previous week, and because they would react to what our show did, we would react to the next week. And it was like this weird circle where we constantly had to re-clarify because they would not quite understand what Jay and I were saying. So that kind of stuff happened all the time. And it drove me crazy.
Be smarter.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Here's a dong take. Don't text somebody about your boss.
Yeah.
So what happened after that was I'm literally like sick to my stomach that this all happened. Because, and this was the most they ever made out of something like this, but there were a couple times when I honestly felt like, and even Jay felt like, I was kind of bullied on the show, and it sucked. It really sucked. And the other thing too is that, like, because not a whole lot of people like listen to the show outside of like Kristian and a few others, I didn't really have anybody to go to because my boss or my handler, my manager, was the one doing it. Or the one in control of it. So, again, it left me no choice but to vent to other people that were in a similar position to me. And I built relationships with some of the other people based on that idea. Jay and I sat down to record Afterthoughts that week. And we just let everybody have it. Here's what really aggravates us about us hosting this show. Here's what really aggravates us as to how you handle us in this way. Here's what aggravates us in terms of how little you care about getting to know us and understanding where we're truly come from. All kinds of stuff. I mean, it went on for probably 2 hours, like a normal episode. I mean, we laid it all out, and the tone of it was wildly different. And if the public heard it, everybody would have been like, holy shit, this is insane. Then they would have understood how deep all of this goes behind the scenes. Because months and maybe years of resentment came out in that episode. And we got a DM from somebody behind the scenes that they had listened to it. They asked us how we were feeling. I told them, again, I was sick to my stomach. And they talked about how crazy the episode was, that it was being passed around. For the longest time, I saved that episode on my desktop. And I don't know, one day, probably several months later, I just decided I didn't want that anymore. And probably after the Schmoes Know breakup in 2019 or in 2020, I probably just decided, you know what, I want to put this behind me, and I don't want to use this in an ugly capacity the way that they did that here. So I deleted it. So the episode, as far as I know, doesn't exist unless I found out that one of the behind-the-scenes people at Collider actually still has it. But I texted Jay the other day because I only remember the broad strokes. I said, did you know that Collider deleted certain episodes of Afterthoughts from YouTube? Basically, our lost episode isn't the only lost episode anymore. What do you remember about that? He said, all I remember is like some shit went down where they got mad at you, but I was pissed at them for some stuff. So we did this totally unhinged episode where we unpacked some shit, good and bad, but we also let them have it. Then I remember there was this whole thing where we quit and it was all good, but then they turned around and really want us to stay, so we did. We did that for a while, and then we were just like, nah, this ain't it. So yeah, that's broad strokes what ended up happening after that. There were only a few episodes of Collider Afterthoughts until we ultimately quit. Fast forward March of 2019, Kristian invited us to Star Wars Celebration. Jay and I drove there and met a whole bunch of the crew. And I had only met Mark Ellis in person. I believe we had met 2 or 3 times previous to that. So all of the people that I had weird relationships with, all the people that I had good relationships with, I kind of got to meet everybody, even Roxy. And they finally put a face to the name after all of the years that I did the after shows. Kristian and a lot of the other guys were talking about like, oh, it was actually really good to put a face with the name, and they were actually like genuinely really nice guys, and it was great to actually talk to them, this and that. I remember telling Jay, I have actually a lot of complicated feelings about that. After all these years, and after all the shit that I went through on these shows, to finally hear them go, you know what, it was nice talking to them, like they're really nice guys, blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey guys, I was the same person the entire time. It's like, what did we just go through? Why did I endure all of this just for you to be like, you know what? He's actually pretty cool. Hey, I have to really work to appreciate my position. Because on paper, I was a guy who was a fan of the Schmoes Know live show, found myself hosting the after show months later. I met Mark Ellis a couple times in person. We made content together. There's a video called Honorary Schmo up on one of the YouTube channels where I riff with Mark Ellis, and it was really, really fun. And I wish I got to do more stuff like that with them, not just after show stuff. I also am very aware that it's a position that a lot of Schmovillians and a lot of fans would have killed for. Because, look, I'm not going to take credit for any other podcast than anybody did, but I was sort of the godfather of the fan-hosted podcast era. There was a version of After Schmo that I hosted where we recapped the Schmodown first, and then Frank Janish and other guys came in and obviously made that into something I never would have. Obviously turned it into something that I didn't want to, frankly, and they crushed it and did a great job. And I think they probably ended up hosting more shows than I did. But and yeah, those are all good guys. I met a lot of them too in Chicago. But yeah, the Schmoville podcast was kind of the start of all that. I know that it's pretty crazy that I ended up getting to meet all of them and have the relationship that I did, but honestly, I don't really have much of a relationship with anybody anymore. I reached out to somebody the other day and kind of caught up with them for a little bit. Somebody that I used to have issues with, but now we're all good because I think they see where I am coming from after all this time, and maybe they relate to me more than ever right now. It was mostly a bad experience, and I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have my best friend in life, Jay, alongside me to kind of keep me grounded and focused. Because if it was like another person that I didn't have a close relationship with, I mean, it would have been much worse. And Jay understood me and supported me and came to my defense and came to their defense when he needed to do that as well. And so, but yeah, I think that clip and that encapsulates a lot. So I think that was probably a little bit more entertaining and useful than just going from A to Z. There's other stuff I can probably talk about, but that was the start and maybe the biggest, most dramatic one. So guys, that's part of my journey hosting the after shows for Schmoes Know and Collider. If you want to see more of these videos, let me know, and I'll react to other things. They're not all going to be this negative. You know, I would actually love to rewatch that video with me and Ellis, and yeah, there's some other good stuff too. But unfortunately, so much of my content from this era is missing. I looked for the standalone after show that we did after Star Wars Celebration, and I can't find it. I also couldn't find them talking about it on Collider Live, which I thought was weird. But anyway, Guys, there's a piece of it. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me wherever you find things on the internet at Rewatch Ryan. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the next thing that I do.